alternatives. We take a look at that in our weekly economic program, Money Matters.
Good morning. At least until recently, Indian project exporters had not got any share of the $60 billion program for the reconstruction of Kuwait in the immediate wake of the recent Gulf War. 70% of the contracts awarded so far have gone to American firms, 20% to the British, and the rest to the French and the German firms. Indian firms are struggling even to get subcontracting from the successful Western firms. Money Matters this week assesses the fallout of the Gulf War on Indian project exports and attempts to explore the emerging scenario.
Due to the construction boom in the Middle East, Indian project exports increased from 232 crore rupees in 1975-76 to a peak of 1,205 crore rupees in 1981. However, as the Iran-Iraq war broke out and the construction boom waned, it declined to a level of 326 crore rupees by 1983. Between 1987 and 1990, the project exports averaged only 279 crore rupees per year, and the likelihood of India achieving the target set for 1990-91 appears bleak. Besides, India has to bear about 6,000 crore rupees more on account of escalated oil import bill, 550 crore rupees fall in remittances, apart from spending 300 crore rupees on evacuation of refugees.
The apparent failure of the Indian project exporters to cash in on the massive Kuwait construction program comes at a time when India is passing through very difficult times, with acute foreign exchange problems, a rising import bill, and whopping fiscal and trade deficits. What then are the possible repercussions of this failure?
No, I don't entirely agree with you because no doubt it is true a lot of money is locked up in Iraq. But we have not failed in getting the construction contracts from Kuwait. Our minister was here for 2-3 days back. You all know very well that he also welcomed the Indians. So we are very confident of getting and helping Kuwait in their reconstruction.
I think there's a misconception that when you hear the news everywhere that lots of contracts have been already awarded to the American or British or French firms. What it really means is they have been awarded management contracts to ascertain the damages done. It also means that they have been awarded contracts to do feasibilities and then to get the facilities reconstructed or repaired. Even the American firms, as well as the British firms, who will need to put in place those facilities and who will be doing all the work, will need talent which is available relatively cheaply, as well as within reasonable proximity of the region. And it is available in India in large measure. And I think as a natural market, I don't think we will miss out on it.
I think we have not missed anything. I think the opportunities are tremendous. We can get what we can do, as much as we can do. But the operative word here is, we must be very clear that we succeed in whatever we are doing. Because apart from looking at this part of it, we also have to look into the later part, where the total reconstruction of the Kuwaiti area will come. And that is a mind-boggling figure, somewhere around 200 billion to 300 billion over 5-6 years. And that is where ultimately everything is going to lead us into.
We do not expect a windfall of subcontracts. Such subcontracts will land at our doors. One of the main reasons for this is the fact that on the political side, we have still to establish our consulate, our embassy in Kuwait, and furthermore, only after they go there and establish the necessary equations with the Kuwaiti government can any semblance of recruitment from India of Indian manpower can take place. there is every chance for Indian tools and equipment, apart from manpower. Other items like sanitary ware, tires, cast iron items and the like, they all will have a very good chance for being used in Kuwait. And we should really initiate concrete steps to see that we have a sizable portion of these imports into Kuwait.
For individual project exporters, the problem is acute. Apart from the bleak prospects of securing future contracts in Iraq and Kuwait, payment of 900 crore rupees remains blocked in Iraq for projects already completed. Another 1800 crore rupees remain frozen on projects in Iraq that were under various stages of implementation. After the war, project exporters cannot transfer their cash balances from banks in Kuwait and Iraq to India, while the interest burdens on loans and overhead expenses have kept on mounting ever since the Gulf crisis began.
Exporters are also in a soup because payments worth some $400 million are held up by Iraq under the deferred payment agreement, mainly in terms of oil supplies. It is not clear how Iraq is going to honor this commitment after its defeat in the war. What then are the possible steps that could be taken to save project exporters from further losses?
We do understand that a high-powered committee has been set up in Delhi recently. No wonder that this was necessary, because it will help expedite getting clearances from one spot when an urgent proposal came up for our participation in Kuwait. This setup, I guess, is also available for export to any other country, and is not a replacement, a substitution to the working group under the Exim Bank. It is other setup essentially created, I believe, to see that project exports get a very quick response from the government.
The first committee under my chairmanship is for interface with the exporters, which we have done in the last few days, and I feel they also appreciate it. And the second committee is for single point clearance if at all there is any problem. And some problems of the project exporters, particularly the money locked up in Iraq, you know very well, we had already recovered, you know, in the form of oil and all that, about $680 million. The remaining $400 million we could not do because of the war, their own problems, the war with Iran, and later on the war here, this Kuwait problem and so on. And last year also, even in 90, we had planned to recover about $85 million in the form of oil. We could not do so for the same reasons. Anyway, we are very seized of the problem. We are thinking of giving some relief to these project exporters. Of course, you must also remember our own financial crunch while giving this assistance.
The project exporter is actually working outside the country, in the country to which you are making an export, and therefore has to face a lot of difficulties. It is unlike a manufactured goods exporter whose woes can end, or whose problems can end the moment he has shipped the goods. Because these goods or facilities have to be put into place in the country to which they are exported. And to that extent, he needs greater assistance, greater flexibility, more monetary support than has been envisaged so far. And to that extent, a more aggressive, a more flexible, and a little more easy policy for allowing project exports to take place is required.
It is worth noting how the concentration of Indian project exports has been increasing in a narrow geographical area of West Asia over time. It was 44% during 1975 to 81, but during 1980 to 86 the percentage has gone up to 70. And Iraq is one of the countries that accounted for a substantial share of project exports. During 1984 to 87, Iraq accounted for 58% of total value of Indian project exports. Given the proven capabilities and expertise, how could India export projects and services to countries other than those in West Asia?
I agree with you. So far, you know, the project exports have been, you know, about 80% in the 80s, were in North Africa and West Asia. Of course, we have already succeeded in diversifying to other countries. For instance, we have gone to Nigeria, Niger, Malawi, Maldives, USSR, some hotel projects and so on. And we are also trying to diversify further in Southeast Asia, say Thailand, Vietnam and other countries. And there is need for diversification, no doubt about it.
The Indian project exports, it is true, have been substantially concentrated in West Asia, and that too mostly in Iraq and a bit in Libya. To some extent this poses a risk, as it did, because when this area faced a kind of a recession after the Iran-Iraq war and the oil price drop and even the recent hostilities in the Middle East, it did create a great slump. But nevertheless, it is a natural market for India, where engineering talent as well as cheap labor is possible for Indian contractors to take to these parts of the world, because they lack labor, they lack the resources in terms of engineering talent and labor to do construction activity and to do project exports is therefore possible. Whereas when you go to other countries in the world, it is not necessary that you will be in a position to take your labor force. And to that extent, Indian competitiveness goes down.
There is always a risk element when you concentrate in specific areas. But then, where are the opportunities? In the Southeast Asia, we have a very severe competition from the Chinese and others who have developed the skills with mechanical equipment to a very fine-tuned situation. And it is very difficult for Indian contractors to build up such a huge capital base and challenge them in their areas. Very few have been able to penetrate, and only now we are expecting some prospects in Thailand.
We should look into the Southeast Asia, the Far East Asia, places like Malaysia, places like Indonesia, Thailand, where opportunities are coming up now. They also want to develop, they want to improve. And here is another opportunity if you look at it in a different way. With everyone concentrating on the Middle East, possibly the opportunities there would be much easier. So we can look into the eastern part of Asia also, where some of the development will be something very close to what we are also doing, because there will be a lot of requirement for infrastructure development, setting up production facilities. So I think while we generally concentrate, and because the opportunities in Kuwait are really large, our first priority should be to see that what we do in Kuwait, and that should be our first aim. But we have, and I think a lot of our companies are going to the eastern area, Malaysia, Thailand, etc. They are also very good opportunities for us.
Diversification of project exports is no easy task, but the lesson of the Gulf War seems loud and clear. Indian project exporters must diversify or perish. On that note, the stock market report of the week.
Industrial equities, which appeared buoyant last week, began adjusting to their natural course and retreated to previous positions this week. As the bulls tried to ignore the impact of the announcement of the elections and extended massive support to highly speculative shares like ACC, DCM, Tisco, Reliance and others, the Bombay Stock Exchange Index shot up by nearly 40 points. However, lack of participation by investors reflected in the recent Badla transactions led the bulls to begin unloading. The market is thus sliding. Market analysts attribute this to the continuing weak financial position of several brokers and say they may not be able to withstand shocks. They say the Bombay Stock Exchange authorities should not allow further transactions before the settlement is met fully by brokers. Forecast: gradual deterioration is inevitable.
Till we meet again in the next edition of Money Matters. Same time, same day, next week.